There is a kind of silence that doesn't come from being alone in a room. It comes from being alone in life. The longer a man goes without a close relationship, the more the world around him keeps moving, while something inside him slowly pauses. He still laughs at the right moments, still shows up, still survives, but the part of him that once reached out, without armor, without calculation, begins to retreat, quietly, almost politely. At first, he tells himself he's just focusing on himself. Then he says he doesn't need anyone. Then one day, without realizing when it happened, he stops expecting connection at all. Plato once warned that human behavior flows from three main sources: desire, emotion, and knowledge. When desire for closeness goes unmet for too long, it doesn't disappear, it transforms. This video isn't about weakness. It's about what happens when strength is practiced alone for too long. Because time without intimacy doesn't leave a man empty. It reshapes him. And by the end of this, you'll understand why the change is subtle, permanent, and deeply misunderstood. Chapter 1. The slow rewiring of his heart. In the beginning, the absence feels temporary. He believes connection will return when the timing is right, when life slows down, when circumstances align. Hope quietly survives in the background. But time has a way of teaching lessons without asking permission. Days turn into months, months into years. The heart, like any living thing, adapts to its environment. When warmth is rare, it conserves heat. When closeness is absent, it learns self-containment. This is not bitterness, it is biology of the soul. Aristotle wrote that man is by nature a social animal. Yet when social bonds are missing for too long, the instinct to bond doesn't vanish, it turns inward. He begins to rely exclusively on himself. His inner world becomes carefully ordered, controlled, predictable. At first, this feels empowering. He doesn't need reassurance. He doesn't wait for messages. He doesn't feel disappointed the same way anymore. But there's a cost to this independence no one talks about. Emotional self-sufficiency slowly becomes emotional isolation. He stops sharing thoughts out loud, not because he has nothing to say, but because he's learned no one is listening. Vulnerability starts to feel inefficient. Why open a door that no one knocks on? Poet Rainer Maria Rilke once said, "The purpose of life is to be defeated by greater and greater things. Love is one of those greater things. Without it, a man isn't defeated, he's preserved. And preservation is not the same as living." Over time, his emotional responses flatten. Not numb, just quieter. Joy becomes private, pain becomes internal. He handles everything alone, and eventually, he forgets how not to. This is the first great change. His heart doesn't break, it reorganizes. 2. How silence becomes his language. Silence at first is a space. Later, it becomes a habit. Then it becomes identity. The longer a man exists without emotional closeness, the more silence stops feeling lonely and starts feeling safe. Silence doesn't ask questions. It doesn't demand explanations. It doesn't leave. Friedrich Nietzsche observed, "The surest way to corrupt a youth is to instruct him to hold in higher esteem those who think alike than those who think differently." In isolation, a man hears only his own voice. Over time, it grows louder, sharper, more convincing. He rehearses conversations he'll never have. He resolves conflicts internally. He processes emotions privately. And eventually, speaking them aloud feels unnecessary, uncomfortable. This is why, when connection finally appears, he may hesitate. Not because he doesn't want it, but because he's forgotten how to let someone close without losing control of his carefully balanced inner world. Poet Khalil Gibran wrote, "Let there be spaces in your togetherness." But when space becomes everything, togetherness feels invasive. The world interprets his quiet as strength, as mystery, as emotional depth. but inside it's simply adaptation. He becomes selective, not just with people, but with feelings. He allows only what he can manage alone. Anything that threatens to destabilize his emotional equilibrium is kept at a distance. This is the second great change. Silence stops being absence, it becomes protection. 3. The paradox of strength and longing. Here's the contradiction no one warns him about. The stronger he becomes alone, the harder it is to let someone in. Stoic philosopher Seneca believed that he who has great power should use it lightly. Emotional strength, when forged in isolation, is heavy. It's rigid, it's unused to being shared. The man who has gone too long without closeness doesn't chase love. He studies it. He observes patterns. He notices inconsistencies. He measures intentions. What once felt instinctive now feels analytical, and yet longing never disappears. It shows up late at night, in moments of unguarded reflection, in the ache he can't name when he sees intimacy expressed effortlessly by others. Poet Pablo Neruda wrote, "I love you without knowing how, or when, or from where." That kind of love terrifies a man who has spent years needing control to survive emotionally. So he wants closeness, but on terms that don't exist, without risk, without uncertainty, without surrender. This creates distance not from others, but from himself. The third great change. He desires connection, but fears the cost of feeling deeply again. 4. When change becomes irreversible. After enough time, the change becomes invisible even to him. He no longer thinks of himself as lonely. He thinks of himself as different, independent, reserved, selective. But beneath those words is a truth Carl Jung captured perfectly. Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. When connection finally arrives, real, sincere, emotionally available, he may struggle. Not because he doesn't care, but because care now feels overwhelming. Intimacy demands presence, openness, emotional risk, and risk is something he hasn't practiced in a long time. Yet here's the quiet miracle. Change does not mean damage. What time has reshaped can still soften. What silence has protected can still open. The man who survived without love carries depth, patience, and emotional gravity few others possess. The final change isn't loss, it's complexity. If you recognize yourself in this, know this. You were never broken by time without love. You were trained by it. The heart that learned to stand alone did so because it had to, not because it wanted to. And the same heart that adapted to silence still remembers warmth even if it feels distant. As the Persian poet Hafez wrote, even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, "You owe me," neither does love. When it returns, it doesn't punish you for surviving without it. It meets you where you are. If this spoke to something you've been carrying quietly, subscribe to this channel. Here, we explore love, silence, destiny, and the unseen emotional truth through psychology, philosophy, and timeless poetry. You're not alone in these questions, and you never have to figure them out in silence again.